What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of When Nature Strikes. I'm your host, Brian, and as I'm sure you can tell that I have a different setup going on. It is to help me do a lot more live episodes. I'm using new software, so it kind of gives me like a way of being more efficient so I can record episodes on the fly like I am going to do right now, or I can actually go live on YouTube. So if you are a subscriber and you are part of my channel and you've been watching all my videos all along, I hope you do tune in to my live videos when I do them. I would greatly appreciate that. It's just the direction that I'm going right now. I am trying to get everything done by myself, so I'm trying not to overdo it, I guess, and trying to keep it a little bit more efficient by using this. So anyways, welcome to another episode. Tonight we are going to cover Helene. Hurricane Helene was a 2024 hurricane, so we are going to get it started tonight. The sea had been quiet for weeks. Late September sun shimmered over the Gulf of Mexico, a deceptive calm that lulled coastal towns into believing that it was just another end to the hurricane season. But deep beneath that calm, the ocean was whispering a warning. Warm water, low pressure, perfect conditions. Out there, somewhere south of Cuba, a storm was being born, and they would call her Helene. Meteorologists first noticed her as a swirl of thunderstorms gathering shape in the Western Caribbean. On September 24th, 2024, that swirl became a tropical storm, and within 24 hours, she had a name and she had an attitude. Helene began to feed, drawing strength from the Gulf's warm waters the same way a fire feeds on dry wood. The pressure dropped and the winds climbed, and suddenly what had been a manageable storm had turned into something far more menacing. She wasn't just growing, she was accelerating. Helene was moving faster than almost any other forecaster predicted, racing toward the big Florida bend at nearly 30 miles an hour. People barely had time to prepare. In Perry, Florida, locals went about their day, and the fishermen mended their nets. Tourists wandered through small seaside shops. The smell of salt and fried shrimp had hung in the air. But the mood had changed quickly. By that afternoon, radio stations were filled with words like evacuation, Category 4, and life-threatening storm surge. At the Keaton Beach Marina, boats were tied tighter than ever. Some owners pulled them out of the water altogether. Yet a few old-timers shook their heads and tried to see if they could tough it out. They said it was just another one, or we've been through worse. By midnight, those same men were boarding up their windows, praying that the forecasts were wrong. The morning of September 26th arrived gray and still. The Gulf looked like glass, the eerie calm that always precedes chaos. Then came the wind. First a gust, and then a roar. By nightfall, Hurricane Helene had become a Category 4 beast, its eye fixed directly on Florida's Big Bend. Inside the storm eye wall, wind screamed at over 140 miles per hour. Waves the height of two-story buildings battered and swallowed the coast. Power lines snapped, sirens howled, and the world outside vanished behind a curtain of rain and debris. At 8:30 p.m., Helene made landfall near Perry, Florida. In a matter of minutes, neighborhoods vanished beneath a surge of water over 15 feet high. Entire homes were lifted from their foundations and carried away like driftwood. In Keaton Beach, families climbed to their rooftops, waving flashlights into the black void, hoping someone would see them or rescue them. Helene didn't linger. She tore through Florida and pushed inland, still strong, still dangerous, and still deadly. As Helene raced into Georgia and the Carolinas, she unleashed a second wave of destruction, flooding. In North Carolina, mountain creeks turned into raging rivers. Asheville, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, found itself at the center of a disaster no one had expected. Bridges collapsed, roads disintegrated, hillsides gave way in deadly landslides. Families fled to their attics, But the attics became prisons, and helicopters buzzed through the mist to reach stranded survivors. By dawn, the storm had claimed dozens of lives in the Carolinas alone. Days later, when the floodwaters receded, the real toll would become clear. When the wind finally stopped, the silence was unbearable. Florida lost 34 lives, Georgia 37, North Carolina 108. The silence was unbearable. Nationwide, more than 250 people were gone. Some were swept away by flash floods, some were crushed by falling trees, and some simply never made it out of their homes. Across 7 states, 4.5 million people lost power. Hospitals operated on generators, roads were impassable, and communication lines were down. Helene had not just struck, she had cut off the Southeast from itself. The morning after landfall, rescue teams launched across Florida's flooded coast. Boats moved through what had once been streets. National Guard units set up makeshift bases in school gyms. People hugged strangers. Volunteers came from neighboring states with water, food, blankets, and hope. But it wasn't enough. Entire neighborhoods in Keaton Beach and Taylor County were gone. 90% destroyed. In Asheville, bridges hung half-collapsed into churning rivers. Federal aid began to pour in, but so did despair. Insurance claims mounted. Many discovered that they weren't covered for flood damage. For some, there would be no payout, just rubble and a memory. Weeks passed. The air smelled of damp wood and salt. Piles of debris lined into the streets. Wood, metal, furniture, fragments of lives. But the human spirit did not stay broken. Neighbors rebuilt together. Churches became supply centers. Restaurants handed out meals for free. Power crews restored electricity to millions. Schools reopened in gymnasiums. Life in small pieces began to come back. Still, the scars remained, not just in the buildings, but in our hearts. For some, Helene was the day they lost everything. For others, it was the day they realized how strong their community can be. Months later, the statistics told another story. The people told another. Helene's total damages was $78 billion. Some experts believe closer to $200 billion when uninsured losses are counted. North Carolina alone reported over $59 billion in needs. Forests worth hundreds of millions were flattened. The Blue Ridge Parkway, once a ribbon of beauty, was blocked by thousands of falling trees. And yet, despite the cost, something beautiful happened. Cooperation. The states shared resources. Volunteers traveled from across America, and slowly the Southeast began to rebuild. By the time the name Helene had been retired, too deadly, too unforgettable to ever be used again. Its replacement, Holly, would one day take its place on the list, but Helene's shadow would linger for generations. Storms like Helene remind us of nature's balance, its beauty, and its brutality. They show us how quickly normal can vanish and how fragile comfort really is. But they also remind us of resilience. Communities that once stood in ruins now stand stronger. People who lost everything now help others rebuild. Helene wasn't just a storm, she was a turning point. She forced us to see the cost of unpreparedness, the urgency of stronger infrastructure, the truth of a changing climate. Maybe in some way, she taught us humility. Because for all our technology, our forecasts, and our models, one thing remains certain. Nature always has the final word on everything. So let's look at the numbers behind Hurricane Helene. The date formed, September 24th, 2024. The date that it dissipated, September 29th, 2024. Maximum sustained winds at landfall, 140 miles per hour. The storm surge was recorded up to 16 feet high. Rainfall estimated in over 30 inches in part of North Carolina. The total fatalities were 252, but this number is just approximate. The direct deaths of this storm, 176. Power outages recorded over 4.5 million. And the estimated cost, like I said, was $78 billion but possibly more than 200 billion, including uninsured losses. The hardest hit states: Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. This name, Hurricane Helene, retired in April of 2025. When the winds fade and the headlines stop, what remains is memory. Every shattered home, every rescued survivor, every name on the list of the lost, all part of the legacy of Helene. But from the wreckage rises something even stronger than this storm: the will to rebuild, the courage to face tomorrow, and the will to survive, and the unshakable truth that even when nature strikes hardest, we rise again. Thanks for watching tonight. Please check out my YouTube channel, The Border City Kids. There are lots of new episodes. Please check them out. Good night.